Let's bring in another governor who was on that call, the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Thank you so much for being on the show this morning. Governor Whitmer, did you hear anything on that call that could be helpful in any way?
You know, as with all of these calls, it started late. We were given documents at the last minute. We thought that it was going to be a totally different subject. And when he started, it was a rant against the nation's governors. And it was surprising. It was galling. I have been on a lot of calls. I don't usually talk about them afterward, despite some of the things that might be interesting to the world. I don't do that. But this one was so bad, and others felt the same way, and it obviously hit the news. And so I do think that it's important to say this is not reflective of who we are and what we need as governors across the country. If the federal government wants to send anything to this, it should be test kits for COVID-19 and swabs. That's what we need more than anything.
So absolutely discouraging. Gene Robinson has a question. Gene, jump in.
So, Governor, how will you then approach this question of we have dual sovereignty basically in the United States. You are sovereign as governor, and he is sovereign as president, and usually that just gets worked out. But it looks as if there might be a clash coming. How do you prepare for that? How do you analyze it, or do you think this is just a big bluff?
You know, I don't know, Eugene. I'm not going to make decisions based on threats to be bullied or tweets or anything other than what I know to be the right thing to do on behalf of the people of the state. As JB just said, the majority of these demonstrations are peaceful. They're organized. They are focused on George Floyd and the issue of police brutality and the history in this country. We're seeing a convergence of this and the racial disparities that COVID-19 is holding up to our nation as a mirror. And we know we have to do better. And leaders across this country, whether are leaders at the local level or state level, the national level, need to be calling for unity and understanding. As a white woman, I have lots of fears about my kids when they leave the house, but I cannot imagine what a woman of color fears when her kids leave. And that's precisely why understanding, knowing the history of this country, and being determined to work together to solve these problems is what we need more than anything right now. Not division, not threats of military. What we need is unity and hope. And that's not what we're getting out of DC. And that's why it's incumbent on every one of us else to step up and fill that void right now more than ever.
Governor Whitmer, it's Willie Geist. The president is focusing on the rioters and the looters and talking about sending in the military. And a lot of people I know who are in the peaceful protest movement who want to see real change are worried that that is going to overshadow their own message. So let's stay on that message for a moment. What is something practical that can change? Because once we get past the sound and the fury and the smoke and the fires, the people leading these peaceful protests want change in their lives. They want change in their communities. So from a policy level, from where you sit in the governor's mansion, what's something that can change tomorrow, next week, next month, that will improve things and move things forward?
I appreciate the nature of the question, because that's really the conversation we should be having in this country right now. You know, here in Michigan, we were one of the first states to release racial data associated with COVID-19. 13.6% of our population is African American, and yet 40% of the deaths from COVID-19 are African American. It is because of a history of systemic issues when it comes to equity in healthcare, equity in opportunity, equity simply being able to have a grocery store in your neighborhood or transportation. And all of these are culminating in this moment to force us to do better. And that's why I created the COVID-19 Task Force on Racial Inequities. It is chaired by Garland Gilchrist, our state's first African-American lieutenant governor. They are tackling issues associated in the midst of this global pandemic, but we've expanded it to make sure that we have got an agenda coming out of this that goes to all of the racial strife that we are seeing play out across this country. We know that, we all know George Floyd's name. We know it because it was captured on video. There are many who have suffered the same fate that weren't captured on video. And that's precisely what we as a nation have to grapple with and put an agenda together. And it comes from task force like the one that the lieutenant governor is heading here in Michigan.
Governor
And
Whitmer.
so, Governor, just quickly, what's a concrete question on policing? How can we address policing? You've identified the problem, but what's a policy change in policing that you would like to see enacted?
There's no question we need training. We need better representation. I mean, we're working on a lot of this, but we've got a lot of work to go. I heard someone on your show not long ago talk about how you have to have a moral compass. And that's something you can't teach. People without it should not be with a badge and a gun. And that is a fact. And that's why we have to take a seriously look at ourselves, how we train, how we are inclusive, how we have representation, and how we hold people accountable.
Yeah. Governor Whitmer, just looking at the overall picture here, we're at well past 100,000 people dead, and more are dying from a pandemic. We have an economic collapse happening with staggering unemployment numbers. And now this racial unrest. I cannot think of a worse scenario for this country. I just can't. And you say he was ranting and that it was just so bad, this call. And I just want to ask for more information from you. What were you hearing from him? What were you thinking about what you were hearing? What's going on with him?
You know what, Mika, I can't tell you what is going on there. I can just tell you that the effect of it is to make what is already a nation that is hurting in more pain. When we see a split screen last night of an address that says, "I stand with peaceful protesters," and on the other side of the screen, you see his police forces shooting rubber bullets at peaceful protesters. It is, it makes you question everything you hear from anyone in a position of power. And it undermines our ability to bring healing to this nation and to bring a focus on issues we've got to confront. I watched it with my 18-year-old daughter, and I mean, it was stunning. I don't have the words to describe the pain that it inflicts on us all. And yet we have to be determined to show the leadership that we need in this country. And that is coming from a lot of our local office holders and our governors across the country.
All right, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, thank you very, very much. And still ahead, we're going to hear from two leading mayors, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, will be our guest. Plus, we have reporters across the country covering yesterday's protests. Those live reports are just ahead. Morning Joe is coming right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.